Hi, welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and with me is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellen. And we're taking on a topic that I may even get a little bit emotional about because I'm mad. It's I'm watching Intel. That was my first job out of college, and I thought that they were just amazing. And we were talking a little bit about Intel was on one side of the street in Santa Clara, and AMD was across the street. And Intel always was ahead, and they were always leading in ideas, and they were going to different countries, testing things out in advance. And to watch where they are now, their stock has dropped in the last 5 years. It's dropped more than in half. So it was at, what is it, 53, and now it's at 23. And they aren't even in the game in a growing market. So it's driving me crazy. And so we're going to unpack that from a marketing lens. So who wants to go next?
Well, I wouldn't mind asking you a question, Mary, since you were on the inside there. What were the
Intel
things?
Inside.
What's that? Oh, yeah, yeah, you were the
Intel Inside.
intelligence. Oh, I didn't even know I was doing that. Um, what were some of the things that they were doing then? I mean, you alluded to them a little bit in your opening, but let's unpack that a little bit more. Some of the things that they were doing to stay ahead when you were there that you suspect or know that they are not doing now.
Yeah, I think thank you. One of the things that I thought was pretty remarkable back then was it was before all of the big home entertainment was coming out. And so we actually went to Japan, to different countries, and simulated a living room
Hmm.
and they were just trying to really see how people were interacting with the different parts of the entertainment system, which seems like that's a lot more downstream. But because they were so smart and so ahead of it, they wanted to anticipate the end users' needs so that then they could start to build the processors that even their direct customers might be needing. So they were way ahead trying to figure things out back then. And I don't see that they are continuing to track trends at all from what I mean, AI. How do you not get AI? So what do you guys think?
I think it's interesting that they were always pushing boundaries technologically, as well as understanding customers. They were always doing this leapfrog technology, like rather than going to the next incremental increase in chip or processor power, they wanted to go one over one. So they were always leading the market, and they had some pretty strong success in that growing market. And as, of course, famously, processors get more and more powerful, doubling or whatever it is in a few years. That Moore's law. I'm not sure exactly what the specifics are, but they were driving that whole way forward. And I just wonder if as the bigger they got and the more they had to focus on efficiency, I wonder how much they took their eye off that sort of that paranoia, famously, which I think Andy Grove said, right? Only the paranoid survive. He was the CEO back in the day. And I wonder how much they just lost sight of that and just didn't see the AI revolution or the massive shift to mobile devices and the slightly different technology. I wonder if it's just a matter of is it almost inevitable when you get to a certain size that you lose that edge? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
is that the case? I guess I wonder what you just said is true. You get too big to fail, and you fail. I mean, you see it even with countries. Over the when you watched Rome fall, is that just the way it is? Does a big company get too big and then they fall typically, or is there something else?
Well, can you think of one that survived? When I worked at GE, well, Tom, you worked at GE also. We used to be very proud about one of the original members of the Dow Jones Industrial Index and the only one to survive 100 years. So by default, it's a very rare thing. Of course, now GE's been broken up into its constituent parts. It's no longer well, when I was there, the world's biggest company. So maybe it is impossible because you think of some of the other big beasts of the sort of Intel time, Microsoft. Microsoft grew huge, but then as things moved more to the cloud and to internet companies, internet enabled companies like Google and so forth, Microsoft lost its way a bit. So did IBM. Now, many of them have had comeback stories, right? So maybe Intel are just going through a hiatus and they're going to come back stronger because of the legacy that they've got. Maybe that's the optimistic future for them.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I think there is a certain inevitability to you get to a certain size and you're going to come up with challenges. We have I don't know, haven't seen anybody that has escaped that, right? But what's interesting to me, where Sean, you and I have this unique perspective of having worked for GE and then been a part of, consulting and training within GE, we could see the differences. I personally noticed an extreme fall off in discipline, in terms of the disciplines that were there under the Jack Welch era. When I was there under Jack Welch, and I'm dating myself, and same with you, Sean, you were there too.
Hey, you don't need to date me, Tom. You date yourself. You're fine. Yeah, I'll lie about my own age. Thanks.
We had, Jack was famous for having a few initiatives, not a lot, and driving them all the way through the culture. And I can say, as an individual, contributor at GE back in the Jack Welch era, that I was totally graded on whether I utilized those disciplines. I learned those disciplines and was able to do them. I mean, you think of things directly related to what's happened to Intel. We had to try to cannibalize our business back in the day. We called it destroy your business. And we
Right.
had to do that exercise. Everybody had to do that exercise. The idea being, if you were in that, 90s era, if you were a well-funded internet startup, how would you destroy your business? And we all had to think about it and try to do that to ourselves and eat ourselves before we got eaten. And I do
Yeah.
think that as you saw, and we moved into a different, beyond Jack Welch era at GE, and we were involved in helping bring some disciplines there, but we also saw that maybe there wasn't the same level of execution
Yeah.
on the disciplines.
Maybe it's a strong CEO. I don't mean strong as in just their capabilities, but one whose personality is almost bigger than the role itself. Jack Welch was in his day and admired by a lot of other CEOs. Andy Grove, we're talking about Intel, was another one that was absolutely larger than life character who the Steve, I mean, continued, but they've not really continued to innovate. They've incrementally improved. Their phones get better, their iPads get better, their screens get better, and so forth. But there's been no real innovation. Well, I'm saying that not that I can recall. Can you guys think of anything? Apple just seemed to be in this churn and burn 'em, high quality, cool tech thing, but not innovative anymore.
What you're pointing to is a mindset of the organization too. Yes, it's a good CEO, but also there's a culture and a mindset that brings with it. When Tom, I like what you said about GE with Jack Welch. Andy Grove would create his objectives, and then we had to, in a very disciplined way, make sure. I mean, I was I was all the way down bottom, and yet my goals had to align to his. So the priorities were very clear there, and it didn't slow them down. They were very disciplined, but they were out checking out new things, and they had a mindset for being entrepreneurial. And I think that those are some threads that seem to be similar at GE and at Intel at the same
I've got
time.
I've got two more. I had the rare opportunity to work under both Jack Welch and Sam Walton. And when I was in the Walmart Sam's Club division of Walmart, and Sam Walton was in his later days, we still, basically he had three or four things, and you had to reflect those disciplines. And if you didn't, you know, you were dinged.
Yeah.
It really is interesting. Yeah, it's interesting from a leadership standpoint and from a strategic standpoint. What these great people that were, they look at the world differently, but then they can communicate it in ways that motivate their teams to do it. So if you're creating marketing strategies at the time, it seems like you'd be more motivated to also, at whatever level you are, to really look around and say, what are the trends that are happening? How do I really make an impact in my space, given that our company is making an impact? So it seems like that, how do you somehow capture that when you're entrepreneurial, when you're a small company like NVIDIA? NVIDIA is just hitting out of the park right now because of their mindset. So how do companies from a strategic standpoint keep that kind of mindset and discipline?
Also, Mary, I think you hit on something. I mean, the whole conversation is leading towards this. The unique thing about some of these CEOs that we're talking about is both visionary, but disciplined in execution and minimalist in execution. Here are the three things we're going to get done this quarter, or here's the two things we get done this year, maybe. So you've got that, and maybe that carries the seeds of its own downfall, because once you've got into this, I've had my vision and we're executing, maybe you stop looking over the horizon and stop scanning for things that are happening. And of course, as much as we can sit here and describe maybe what happened and the root cause, we also know to some extent how you prevent this, right? With some of the tools that we have. We talk about trends analysis, but it really is broader than that. When we sometimes help people just to see around corners, just to say what, and that has to be a discipline, right? I think if you can get a vision and an execution, you might think you're set, and you are in the medium term, but you've still got to have that scanning, that little those tripwires that are just looking to see what's happening outside of our bubble, because that you'll get wrong-sided.
It points out too the vulnerabilities of transition of power. I thought my screen was breaking up, so I had said I had two examples. I said one, Sam Walton. The other one, we wrote about the guy from Hire. I can't remember his name in our second book, right? The case study book we wrote about the guy that's been at Hire for I don't know if he's still there, but he was there for 35 years, and he had that continuity. But at some point there's got to be the transition of power, and I think when there's this transition of power, everybody wants to put their new mark. It's a human thing. They want to put their new mark on the organization. But I think you lose the sight of what you're talking about, Sean. There's some fundamental disciplines that you just got to keep. And trend analysis is the one I think that we all see that companies tend to have or tend to be lacking in their formality of that program. It's not they don't do it enough, often enough, informally enough, and they end up missing big trends.
Yeah, and ironically,
to add to that, I want to add to that for a second. So to add to that, it would be along with that discipline of doing pilots, or like what I was describing, simulations and war games. So those are some of the tools that really allow you, you see something over the horizon, then to be able to figure out the implication to you. Is it an opportunity? Is it a threat? What do we do about it specifically? That's where those tools are so important, especially war gaming. Smart companies that we work with do war gaming, and they're always trying to figure out, should we partner with this company? Are they going to eat us for lunch? And they're ready with the next plan of attack. So I like that combo effect of how you take the trend, but then what smart companies are doing to use it moving forward.
Keep going, Sean. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna grab our case study book because I want to give a shout out to that guy at Hire that I can't remember his name. Go, Sean.
Okay. The irony to me is we're talking about Intel as well, the topic that started this conversation, and famously already said Andy Grove had this idea of only the paranoid survive, and if hopefully Intel will survive and prosper, and this is more of a temporary reversal, but nevertheless it almost doubles down on his sentiment, doesn't it? It's like if you were paranoid enough, if you were worried about AI, you're worried about the increase in the march of mobile chips and how they are different and how you need to react differently to that customer set. If you'd been paranoid about all of that stuff, maybe you would have had sufficient insight to make some early changes to protect some of your market share.
What do you call it when you are so myopic? You're like totally just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're cutting costs, you're rearranging people's jobs. That isn't paranoid. It's just like you're in a survival mode, which is probably even different than that type of paranoia that he was saying, right?
Yeah, you got too much going on too much around you to see any sort of distance. You can't see the wood for the trees or something like that. You're just so caught up in the immediate surroundings, you can't see past it, maybe.
I think it's the forest through the trees.
Tom looks pleased himself. He must have his
Okay.
reading
And
speeds
higher,
have improved so much recently. Look at him go.
and remember, higher is company. It's HEIER. Is that right?
HAIER, Higher Appliances, based in China, and Zheng Ruimin, ZhangRuimin is the CEO. His name is worth saying on our podcast because that guy did an amazing job for Hire.
And they bought the GE appliance stuff.
Yeah.
So, they were so smart that they go, let's just take GE's appliances. And we saw that happening. We saw where they were starting to kind of keep an eye, and then they just came along at the right time.
Tom is like a chat show guest. He's like, "Oh, I've got a book out. What film are you
Find it on
starring in, Tom? Tell us about the
Amazon.com. It's
film."
called The Accidental Marketer Casebook. We were just talking about chapter 3, written by the 3 people on this podcast. Okay.
Yeah. And it's just,
Wow.
is it just in time for the holidays? It makes a great gift, a great stocking filler, wouldn't you say, Tom?
Yeah, although
I'd be
probably gonna
thrilled to get that as a Christmas present.
yeah, this will be posted in January probably. So you guys, if you forgot somebody
Oh
on
yeah, you know what? I've done that where you get one and you forget the fiction and it's not going to post until after the day. So yeah, it's amateur hour here on the podcast today. I'm talking about the holidays and we're past them by the
Little
time you hear this.
birthdays, Valentine's Day, Boss's Day, all kinds of
There's
days.
lots of just buy it for the one you love for no reason. That's the best kind of gift, right? No reason.
Or even for yourself. Anyway, we hope that there's a few things that you can relate to. You've all had bosses and companies that you've loved and not loved so much. So hopefully you've learned some lessons. We love it when you guys send us messages and tell us about your experiences. So don't hold back whenever you end up hearing this. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.